Hey girl, welcome to Overcoming Narcissistic Relationships with Olivia. I am so happy that you're here and listening to this right now because I have a bucket load of questions for you. The first one is, are you currently in or have you previously been in a toxic relationship before? Have you wasted valuable time and energy hoping that he would change? Do you keep attracting men that aren't good for you or falling for the wrong men? Have you been wondering if you're unhappy and deserve better than what you've been getting? Have you discovered that your partner or your ex-partner is a narcissist or has traits of a narcissist? Are you recovering from narcissistic abuse? Are you wondering how to overcome these relationships and break the cycle of going back to toxic love and toxic men? If you answered yes to any of these, then you are in the right place. This is a feel-good podcast for the woman on her journey to self-love, confidence, and worthiness. Each episode, I will bring to you an inspiring guest or an empowering thought that will help you bust through your fears, connect to your soul, and get clear so that you can elevate yourself in your life and your relationships. Get ready for some real talk and to unapologetically take charge and reclaim the life and relationships that you really want. My name is Olivia, and I'm a relationship and narcissist recovery coach. Bringing women together to create positive change within themselves and others is what I do. Are you with me? Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. I have got Shayna Lease with us today, who I'm super over the moon about having on here because, let me tell you why. 2 or so years ago, I hopped onto YouTube and I was researching what a life coach was. And the very first video I watched was Shayna Lease's. And basically that's where the whole journey started of becoming a coach pretty much. And I watched her I think it was 200 videos every day on my commute to work. I was watching a video there and back. It was insane. I felt like I already knew this girl, but now today we actually finally get to meet. So Shayna, thank you for joining me. And for those that don't know, Shayna is a life coach, a YouTuber, and an educator in the career sector.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited.
I still can't really believe it. I'm kind of pinching myself in some respects. But cool. So I asked Shayna to be on here today because through some of her videos that I watched, I remember her saying that she was in a bit of an abusive domestic violent relationship for a little bit there. Didn't touch too much on it, of course, because she was all about life coaching and career and all that jazz. And then I reached out and was like, hey, do you want to hop on and talk to my girls about this? And she's like, sure. So here she is.
Here I am.
Here she is. And Shayna's big thing in her podcast as well is all about not asking for others for permission or someone else for permission, but rather actually looking internally and giving yourself the permission. So Shayna, can you tell us a bit more about your concept, where that came from,
Sure.
why you believe in it so much and that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really goes back to kind of my story and why I started life coaching. So I'll try to give you the Twitter version. Growing up, I was a hardcore rule follower. I did everything as I was told, everything that was expected. I got really good grades in school. And I was just kind of considered a really good student. And again, did everything as I was expected to, right? I graduated high school, I went to college, and then I got out of college and I got a corporate 9-to-5 job. And the second corporate job that I was in, I was like, oh man, there's got to be more to life than this. I mean, I had set my whole life up for success and happiness, that I was being told that was the path. And then I was like, no, I was more miserable than I had ever been. So it really was a mind shift. One day I woke up at my job and I just literally, it was just my mind that changed. It was a belief. And I said to myself, I am meant to do something far greater with my life. And that one belief drove me to wake up that morning and quit my job without a plan, with $80,000 in student loan debt. I mean, just really no idea what my next direction was. I'm pretty sure my mom wanted to kill me, but I was like, it's okay, mom, I'm going to figure it out, even though I was super scared. And then long story short, I ended up moving to Los Angeles. I moved here. Again, no idea what I was going to do. When I got here, I was kind of like, oh crap. I had that oh crap moment of what did I just do? I just uprooted my entire life and I have no idea who I am, what I want, what I'm going to do with my life. And that's how I found personal development and self-help. And it completely changed my life. The concepts that I was reading in this book, all these books, I could not believe that we were never taught this stuff growing up. I just could not believe it, and just really diving into all of it and applying the concepts and the tools into my own life. That's when everything changed for me. And I realized that I had so much more freedom than I thought I did. Right. Like I was living my life in this very linear way and following all of these subconscious beliefs and limiting beliefs that I didn't even know I was following because I wasn't aware enough of what was happening in my mind to know. Like I was just, my brain would tell me one thing and I'd be like, oh, okay, like we're doing this. Right. But now I know that whatever our brain says is just coming from fear, right? Like I have to do this, I should do this, and all of that talk. So once I was able to really become aware of it and detach from it, and then really choose on purpose what I wanted to believe and how I wanted to live my life, that's when everything changed. And that's why I'm always preaching like, you don't need permission from anybody about, what you want to do with your life and the path that you want to carve. And that's really, the people that I work with now, they tend to be mini me's. I remember when I went through coach training, they were like, you're probably going to get a lot of mini me's, which I do. I get a lot of people who kind of did everything right, follow the rules, and are like, have that same oh crap moment of like, I'm not happy. Like, I don't even know who I am or what I want. And then through my coaching, that's where I help them really just get back to themselves and literally hand their life back to them through getting to know themselves better than they ever have before and really starting to live with intention and not just waking up like most of us do and waiting to see what happens and then having a reaction to it. When you can do that for your client and help them, become aware of that and live with more intention, I mean, you've literally just like handed back their life. So yeah, that's where the whole like permission granted comes in. I never obviously tell my clients what to do with their life because I don't know. That's not my job. That's kind of what got them into this mess in the first place. But it's really just giving them the permission and the space to figure it out for themselves.
Yes, I love that. Especially when you were like, I've done all these things right. I've done what I was told to
Yeah.
do. Society told me to do this, finish year 12. We call it university here, not college, but like, go to uni, get your degree, get a great job, get a house, get married, have kids, boom, it's all done, happy ever after. And it's like, well, there are so many people that do that and end up so unhappy. And they're like, why am I so unfulfilled? I've done all the right things, so to speak. So I definitely related to that when I was listening to your stuff a few years ago and I continue to do so. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've done the same thing. I've gone to school, gone to year 12, gone to uni, got my degrees, thought I fell in love with the right guy, was ready to get married, blah, 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 blah. And then when that all didn't happen, I, as everyone knows, who listened to me, spun me into my quarter life crisis, discovered you and a few other people. And I was like, oh, wow, I don't need permission to do something if I want to do it. So for me, it was like, I wanted to do life coaching, so I did it. Do you know what I mean? Like I gave
Yeah.
myself that permission. I wanted to go part-time at work, even though everyone thought I was crazy. And it's like, who even does that? You don't even have kids. Who are you to go part-time? Like you have got no reason to go part-time. And it's like, well, I want to be a business owner. So I made that happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my end goal is now not following what everyone tells me that I should be doing to have a lead, a happy, fulfilling life. It's like, what does Olivia need to have a happy, fulfilling life? Because what I want isn't necessarily the same as Joe Blow down the street, right?
Totally.
And
Hmm.
so one thing I realized as well after listening to your stuff and learning more about what you teach, I was like, wow, I was always seeking permission from my ex all the time. Permission to spend money on this or permission to go there or to do this or to do that or whatever. And I was always looking to him for advice and validation, all that sort of stuff, right? And
Right.
so for me, it was a big lesson because I was like, wow, I've actually been looking to everybody in my life for permission or going to people with an idea and hoping that they think it's good. And then if they did, I'd do it rather
Right.
than going, what's right for me? What do I like? What do I believe in? Blah, 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 blah. And then following that intuition and that inner voice. And you always call it the essential self, which was a new term to me as well. So I've integrated that now. But yes, can you tell us a little bit how that all fitted in when you had that relationship that wasn't good for you? Because obviously you found someone now who, appears fantastic and you guys look very happy together online. Tell us a bit
Totally.
about that part of your life.
Yeah, right now I'm in a very healthy relationship, the healthiest relationship I've ever been in, which is wonderful. So, when I was in that past relationship, it was before my transformation. So, it was before I found self help and personal development. I started dating him my junior year of college, and then it went into my senior year of college and a little bit after that. And when we first started dating, it was not physically abusive. It seemed like a really good relationship. For me, I guess it's important to know that it was my first like real relationship, right? Like you kind of have like these little light relationships in high school or whatever. But for me, it was like my first real relationship. And so, yeah, in the beginning, it was not physically abusive at all. The abuse didn't start until about 9 months in. And it was one of those things where I think that, if you've never been in an abusive relationship before, you kind of look at people who are in it or who have been in it and who talk about it, and you're like, how can that be? Like, how did you not get out? How, you know what I mean? You have like,
You
you
do.
just like, you just don't get it. You don't understand. And I like probably was that person like before I was in the relationship, right? But when you're in it, it's like a whole other
Story.
situation. You're like so wrapped up in it that I didn't even know I was in an abusive relationship. And it was bad. And the fact that like I really didn't consider it abusive at all is just so insane. Like looking back, I'm like, what was I thinking? And I think at that point, again, when I was in high school, I was very much in alignment with my essential self, as I call it. Like I was doing things that I loved and I loved the people in my life and I was in a really good space. But like I said, when I went to college, I really only made that decision because I thought it's what I had to do. It was not a conscious decision on my part. So when I went into college, I really lost myself. Like I was, I had all these friends from the outside and I was in a sorority and it looked all great and fun. And I did, manage to get good grades, of course, because I was a rule follower and I did everything right. So I think, when I met him, I was all wrapped up in like the not knowing of who I was. I was just going along for the ride of college. And I think that what I know now about the abusers are, they seek out women like that, right? Like who they know that they can kind of take advantage of and who are weak a little bit. And yeah, I think I was just really naive. And there were a lot of moments and times where I was warned and, my family and friends tried to get me out and I was still super oblivious to what was happening. So yeah, I mean, the actual abuse probably lasted for a year and a half about that. We tried to break up a few times here and there, but it was one of those things where I felt like I needed him. Like I needed him in my life. And then the worse it got, the more stubborn I got, I guess. Like I felt like I needed to teach him a lesson. I needed to go back and be the stronger one and get out stronger, but I would just get wrapped up in it again because at that point in my life, again, I wasn't doing this work. So I really thought, he was causing all the distress in my life, and I just wanted him to change so that I could feel better. I wanted his behavior to change and I wanted to control him, the one thing he was actually doing to me, so that I could prove to me that like I changed him and he's better, right? And again, like looking at it now, it doesn't make much sense at all. But back then, that's the headspace I was in, and it was not a healthy one.
Do you think it impacted your trajectory of everything? Because like one thing I talk about is how relationships can be so directly linked to work and business. And so a
Mhm.
lot of women that, I work with, the women that reach out to me, they're always like, I'm finding it so hard because, we had a fight last night, we set up late, I couldn't concentrate for the test today, or, I couldn't pitch that thing at work or I flunked out on it because I was so exhausted or my head wasn't in it and blah, blah, blah. And so they've just been so affected by these relationships. And I always talk about how people have transformations after they come out of these. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like it holds up a direct mirror to you and it's like all of your everything is mirrored back to you.
Yeah.
Your strength, your resilience, any weaknesses, flaws, any codependency, any sort of like confusion, blah, 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 all of that, like that relationship that you go through actually mirrors that back onto you. So you get into the relationship, it turns a bit sour, obviously, after a certain period of time.
Yeah.
And then it makes you kind of wake up to yourself, I guess, the new life that you want to create for yourself.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely went through that. I mean, when I was with him, it definitely took a toll on me. Like you're saying, like the people you talk to, I worked full time on campus when I was in college. So it would affect me going into work, sometimes it would affect me going to class sometimes. And I was just like really exhausted by it and drained by the relationship. And it was so incredibly unhealthy. And I definitely consider it the darkest point of my life. I would consider corporate life after that the lowest. I would consider this the darkest. That's what I kind of always say about it. But yeah, getting out of it, I don't know, obviously, too many stories from too many women because it's not, the demographic that I work with but for me, it was I don't want to say overnight, like it was, kind of gradual, but at the same time, it was a light switch for me. I just kind of was like, what am I doing? Like, I deserve better than this. And like, I just was sick of somebody else controlling my life. I was so ready to take the steering wheel of my own life. It got to a point where I realized that I couldn't control him. Like, no matter what I did, I couldn't control him to make me feel better. I couldn't control him to look at me a different way and for me to feel more confident, right? Like, I just couldn't. It was a never ending battle. And then that's when I realized I got to do this for myself. And I did. I think that I made the choice to really change my life around and turn my life around for me. I think maybe there was a part of me that thought, like, oh, I'm going to prove to him whatever. But so be it. If that was 5% of it, then whatever, like I freaking did it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
then afterwards, like you're like, I don't care if he knows or not, because it's all about you and your own transformation. And that's really all that matters.
Yeah. Do you feel like who you are now is totally different to the girl that you were
Oh,
back then?
oh my God. I don't even know who that girl is. Like literally. And that's why I don't talk about it a lot. I think that there's like this people think, oh, she doesn't want to talk about it because she hasn't healed or recovered from it. No, it's not something if I sat in therapy tomorrow and somebody brought it up that I would just start crying over it. I wouldn't. Like, I'm so done with that part of my life. And for me, it was really like drawing a line in the sand. I like stepped over that line and I never looked back. And, even I would have girlfriends from college who, like a birthday would come up or Christmas and they would like write in the card and say something like, oh, you've been through so much. And like they would bring it up. And I'm like, no, like that's not my life anymore. I was just so done with it. So, yeah, I don't know that girl at all. And I don't ever look back, not because it hurts, just because it does not serve me at all. It just doesn't serve me. It was part of my past, it's part of my story. And, when we harp too much on our story. And the other thing was, I was just determined and I made that decision in my mind that, again, I wasn't going to let him have any control over me, right? Because that's what so many of us do. Even though we're not physically in the relationship anymore, we let them completely control the trajectory of our lives, right? Like we show up in a different way because they hurt us. And, it's all of this very victim mentality. And I was not willing to go there. I was just like, nope. Again, like not to say that people listening who've been in abusive relationships shouldn't go to therapy and whatever, but for me, I never felt the need. For me, I was like, that's done. I'm growing. Let's learn from it. Let's move on. And that was it, really.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
funny you say that, Shayna, because like for me, as I've probably said in a previous podcast already, but for me, it was like I didn't really feel the need to go to a therapist either. I didn't feel like there was, and not to say that anyone that does go to therapy, there's something wrong with them, but I didn't feel like I needed that for myself. I think in hindsight, I would have loved a coach. Like if I had just known someone who'd gone through the same thing and was like out there promoting it, blah, 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 this is what goes on, da, 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 I can help you. I'd be like, frick yeah, take me on. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't want to have that. And I had like I think I had like a bit of a wrong idea as to what a therapist was, or had negative connotations about what they were and all this sort of stuff too, though. Because I kind of thought, I don't want to be that sheepish girl that rocks up to therapy and is there. I had like a very wrong idea of what it was all about, like waiting in the waiting room and someone's having like a psychotic break. And I'm like, I'm not that person. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be there in that environment. Like, that's not.
Yeah.
And I never liked the word victim. I never
Mm.
considered myself to be one. I knew that I had been mistreated and, abused, manipulated, all those sort of things. But I was like, no, I'm not a victim. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to be seen or perceived, or I didn't want to perceive myself as like that, and once again, not judging anybody if anyone's gone through this, but it's more like I just didn't want to imagine myself being as like that, what's that character from Lord of the Rings? Where it's
Oh,
like,
I don't watch it.
oh, don't you? Have you
No.
seen Lord of the Rings?
Sorry.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna kick myself for not remembering this. But that little character that's like over, like that's just like my precious. I didn't want to be feeling like weak like that. I was just like, no, like I don't want to be
Yeah.
that person. So I was
Yeah.
more future focused rather than wanting to look at the past because it was so painful. I'm like, what's the future look like? I want it to be fun. I want it to be.
Well, you're in the right career field then.
That's how I got here. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But some people feel the need for therapists. But yeah, so when you felt like you kind of, you drew the line in the sand, you made the decision, was that around the same sort of time that you had enough of like working in your corporate job and being miserable working for someone else and that sort of thing?
No, that was the next wave. So I
You've had two waves. I love
Yeah, I got through that, and then, yeah, it was, like, almost immediately I got through that because it was the end of my senior year or, like, the end of that summer, and then I had to go into the real world, quote, unquote, in the workforce, and then that's when the relationship really was behind me. So, yeah, the next wave was like, "Okay, I'm this empowered girl, and I'm gonna take control of my life," and then I'm like, "Oh, shoot, what's going on now?" I got a double dose, you know?
That's funny because, like, if that relationship maybe didn't happen first, perhaps it would have taken you longer to do that in the corporate world. Do you know what I mean?
Maybe.
Like,
Yeah,
bit by bit,
yeah,
you're probably shedding that old part of yourself, and that was just you continuing to shed that old identity, and you're like, "Nope, I'm not
totally.
gonna keep living at effect anymore. I'm taking control. I'm taking the reins. I'm gonna do this. I've done that, so I can do this." That sort of mentality and mindset.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I got both waves, but they were both hard in different ways.
yeah.
Again, even though I don't talk about that relationship a lot, I do think everything happens for a reason, like you're saying, right? Like, I think that happened for a reason to lead me to this, and then it leads to this. I think the biggest thing that I learned from that relationship and corporate, all the lessons go together, is I think that for sure everything happens for a reason and things come into our life and people come into our life to teach us a lesson, right? Whether that be a relationship or a job or whatever.
Mhm.
And I think that the biggest lesson for all of us to learn is once we learn the lesson, you keep on moving.
Yes.
So many of us learn the lesson and we just stick around,
Yeah.
And
Full
that's what I
stop.
did in that. Yeah, that's what I did in that relationship. And that's what I did in corporate for a while. And that was a big lesson for me, And I think a lot of people are scared because, again, we have these beliefs of like, oh, I can't leave this job after just 9 months because how will it look on my resume? And I'll never get hired again, and we come up with all of these justifications for staying in situations that internally do not feel good, right? And same thing with the relationship. I was like, oh, but like nobody will ever love me like he loves me, and I was just having all of this mind drama and justifying these really poor situations in my life. So I think that, yeah, I think once you learn the lesson, you get out of there, and then you go on to the next, because I do think that the universe is the biggest classroom. It's just so many of us are sitting in the wrong class for too long.
Ooh, that's a great quote.
No, thanks. I
I
just made
love
it up.
that. I think you need to pull that out and put that on your Instagram. That's brilliant.
I'm writing it down now. What did I say? No, just kidding.
It'll be on the replay, don't worry.
Yeah, okay.
But it's true. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so
Yeah.
true because, if you've been held back in one way, you're often held back in other ways. And like, I know I had those limiting beliefs. I was like, what if I never find anyone again? What if I never,
Mhm.
meet my Prince Charming? Not that I really believe that happens anymore anyway. I've got a different set of beliefs around that. But it's kind of like, and, I know a girl actually who used to job hop a lot. And people will be looking at her and going, oh my gosh, she just can't hold down a job. But it's like, well, actually, no, she was on this path of trying to find out what she actually loved to do because she was fed
Right.
this, and we're all fed this. Like, you go to uni, you stay in the one career. But nowadays, that's not normal. Most people change careers, I think it's like 7 times in their lifetime, but it'll probably
Mhm.
be more, in the next decade or two.
Hmm.
And so she was just kind of like, she'd stay there for a couple of months, realize it wasn't for her, and then she'd find a different job in a different industry. And she's like, I'm
Mhm.
just experimenting to see what I actually like
What's
and how I want to spend my life, rather than working the one job that she doesn't like or isn't fulfilled by for 20 years or something like that,
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
I actually have something to say about all that.
okay.
So for people that are listening and job hop and whatever, right? I think that like what you're saying with that example, totally down for it, right? Like, yes, like let's experiment, especially in our 20s. Man, if I could go back, I'm in my 30s, everybody who's listening. But if I could go back, and especially, oh my gosh, if I didn't go to college, I would have grabbed some loans and traveled. I would have taken so many different classes, right? Like I would have taken like even a photography class or like play the piano because I always wanted to play the piano. And like I could have done so much with that $80,000. Not that I probably would have spent that much money, but you know what I mean? Like I would have for sure taken some money and just experimented and just again got to know myself, for sure. I think that some people, and I talk, some of my clients are like this, they job hop because they think it's I mean, listen, we got to find our purpose in life and what lights us up and what brings us joy for sure. But a
Yeah.
lot of people skip over the internal work and the self work of like getting to know themselves and figuring that part out. Like, I'll have a friend who'd be like, hated their job, got laid off or something. And they're like, it sucks, but it's a great opportunity. I can finally figure out like what I want to do with my life. And then like 2 weeks later, they're in another job that's pretty similar or something completely different, but they totally skipped over the figuring out part, right?
That's
So I think that it's really important if you're job hopping, what's the reason why,
yeah,
right? And if you like your reason, like your example, it sounds like she's really like in tune with it. Great. But if the reason is because like you're just like looking to the job to like make you happy, but you're not really figuring out what actually makes you happy, that's when you got to pull back and question it, you know? So I think that's just a really big distinction there.
yeah, I so agree. When you were with that toxic, well, in that toxic relationship, how did that affect you in your work, career, study, that sort of thing?
Again, I listen. I studied communications in college. Okay, it wasn't brain surgery. I wasn't, curing cancer. It was fine and it was challenging at times. I did a lot of public speaking. Okay, which is
Really?
probably why I credit my YouTube, presence with that. But my major wasn't that difficult, and I'm a pretty smart girl. Like I could go through it, but I don't think my grades suffered too much. I think, again, it more affected my job on campus. I worked full time on campus. So I worked at a child development center. It was across the street from my sorority, which was super convenient. And I worked there like 35 hours a week. So I was busy. Like I was doing that. I had school and then I was in this toxic relationship too. But yeah, I think it affected my job the most, like showing up late or calling out. And especially like when I actually had physical marks on my body, like that was not okay. And like sometimes like it was hard to cover up, especially if it was like warmer weather or whatever. So in those situations, yeah, I don't even know. I think I called out a lot. And my boss and people I work with started like knowing something was up, you know?
Yeah,
But again, I was so far in it that it was always just like me brushing it off, you
yeah,
know, and protecting him, which is interesting, right? Always trying to protect him because I didn't want anybody to think badly of him because this is, in my mind, the person that I want to be with forever. And I can't let my family know about all this bad stuff because they'll never accept him, right? And I can't let my friends know because they'll never accept him. And then, so it was kind of that mindset too, where I was just constantly protecting him and making excuses for him.
yeah. And that's very normal. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
Because especially with friends and family as well, because you're wanting, like, one, you think you love them, you want to stay with them. So if you let everyone know about it, you know that they're going to turn on the situation. You don't want that to happen, so you cover it up and
Yeah.
you deny the reality. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, it's fine, nothing's wrong, it's okay. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
Like furthest thing from the truth, but you don't realize it at the time. What
Mhm.
was the breaking point for you? When did you go, that's enough, I'm done. Like I am out of here.
Yeah, there was a lot of cheating, but again, it was gradual in the sense of like we would break up, we would get back together off and on all the time, like no matter what happened. What happens again in any situation that you're in that's not right for you, the red flags will get brighter, and they'll get more intense the longer you go in a situation that's not right for you. Because it's like the universe's way of like hijacking the reins and being like, if you're not going to pay attention to this sign, we're going to throw this, right? And I
Mhm.
guarantee you, for anybody who's been in a toxic relationship, they can understand like it doesn't ever get better. It literally just keeps getting worse. And yeah, so I think the breaking point for me was all of the red flags just like jumbled up together. And then when I had graduated college, I moved back home. And I think the separation, the distance between us really helped. So I wasn't on campus. I wasn't seeing him. He lived in a different state than I did. And then I started, going into the workforce and the real world and everything. So I guess in some way it was gradual, but again, when I like left college for good after that summer, I was just done. I was ready to move on. I was exhausted. I was exhausted from it. It really takes a toll on you.
Yeah, it sure does. What lessons would you say, or what kind of information would you impart on people that are going through the same sort of thing?
I would say definitely if you can pull yourself out enough to get some help. You know what I mean? You've got to. Your family and friends can tell you anything that you want, but until you get it, like you're not going to get it. Right. And I think that talking to somebody who's so outside of it can be really helpful. I didn't know what life coaching was back then. But again, it might be more appropriate for somebody in that situation to get a therapist, right? Like, I don't know. I didn't have anybody during it, but definitely reaching out for help. And yeah, I think just always recognizing that your sense of self and your worthiness and your confidence and all of that is never dependent on them, ever. And I know that can be hard to see when you're in it, but like you got to grant yourself the permission to take a step back and look at the big picture of really what's happening, and question it all. That's kind
Giving
of,
yourself permission to even just question why you're in it, question if
mm,
you're happy,
yeah,
giving yourself permission to act differently if you want to, rather than keep playing out the same behaviors that you've been trained to do in the relationship. Giving yourself permission to take a holiday if you want. If you need to get out of the house, out of the situation for a while, get some space, you can do that.
yeah,
I think it's just, especially with women in these particular situations, they don't feel like they have permission. They're seeking it out from other people and even their partners or their exes or whatever. And it's like, well, you don't actually need to do that. Like, you're a grown up, you're a grown woman, you have all this free will. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so much available to you. You can give yourself the permission if you want it. And that's what I love about your podcast too. Even though it's more about like the career sector and passion and stuff like that, it's the same thing, just across a different area of life, So
yeah.
thank you for all the work that you do and sharing all of that. And for those that don't know Shayna Lees, you need to be watching her YouTube channel. It is awesome. And her Instagram. Where
And
can
my
they find you online, Shayna?
Sure. So my website's www.shaynaleis.com. So you spell my name ShainaLeis. Same thing with YouTube. It's youtube.com/ShaynAleis. And my handle on Instagram is Shayna Leis as well. So
Love it. So congruent.
yeah. I try to keep it
Awesome.
simple, guys.
Yeah, keep it simple for us.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. The ladies are going to love this one. So appreciate your time, Shayna, and thank you for being on.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you for listening, sister friends. For more support and one-on-one coaching to help you through your own recovery journey, or if you're wanting to start a business in this niche, then you can email me at oliviapowellcoaching@gmail.com. That's OLIVIAPOWELL coaching@gmail.com. To connect with other like-minded women who might be in the same stiletto heels as you right now, head to my online virtual space on Facebook by searching Overcoming Narcissistic Relationships with Olivia. Just answer the entry questions and feel free to invite your girlfriends. Or come and hang out with me on YouTube or Instagram, where you will find pretty pictures, uplifting and thought-provoking quotes, and tons of value that you don't want to miss. If you enjoyed this episode or something has resonated with you, then be sure to subscribe to this podcast so that you're informed of every single episode that comes out and so you don't miss a thing. Share the love by passing this on to someone that you know who would benefit from hearing the free content of this podcast. And I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review on iTunes, because your review will help the success of this show so that it has the potential to reach many more women who would benefit from hearing this message too. For more beyond this podcast and places to reach me, please see the show notes for all the links. Until next time, much love, Olivia.